Welcome back to part 2. First we have Chandra Novice Pyromancer, the youngest of the 3 Chandras. Still pretty good though, like a 4-cost, 5 loyalty planeswalker is pretty good. Can get her up to 6 the turn you play her. You can also just basically make her effectively be a 4 loyalty planeswalker that costs 2 by using her ManuS ability, which is a pretty nice tempo boost. And of course, in limited especially, -2 usually has a fair share of options to kill things like small and mid-sized flyers and stuff. Yeah, the card seems pretty strong in limited all in all, especially because the -1 and the -2 are so good, and the +1 is not like great or anything, but it does stuff, I guess. So yeah, all in all, pretty good limited uncommon, I would say. Probably not very interesting in Constructed, but could be like a fringe consideration in Constructed, because both ManuS abilities can be interesting in the right context. Next we have Chandra's Spitfire. There's a bunch of nice options in limited for this. Chandra's Outrage, there's the 1-drop that pings on attack, there's the Chandra we just saw with the -2 to face, and stuff like that. So yeah, the 3-cost 1/3 flyer isn't bad, not great though, but if you have ways to buff it, or just a couple of ways to trigger it, this gets pretty strong pretty quick. So in the right deck this is amazing, otherwise it's fine, I would say. But yeah, not a constructed card. Next we have Dragon Mage, old rare turned uncommon, because it was a pretty bad rare and now it's a mediocre uncommon. Not a constructed card, and I think even in limited this is not great. Like 7-cost 5/5 flyer in limited is okay, solid, I guess. The ability can be quite problematic because it is symmetrical, and yeah, it can really backfire, and the opponent can draw into outs and stuff. So, and it's not a maze, so it happens automatically. So it's kind of a weird card that is a bit uncontrollable. So not sure how much I like it in limited, honestly. Next we have Ember Hauler. Double red is always a bit restrictive 1/2 in limited, but since you can also play this as basically like a 3-cost DL2 later in the game, it's still pretty good. Like if you can play it on turn 2, great. If not, you just use it as like a 3-cost DL2 later, which is not great, but it's solid and is also quite flexible. And even in constructed, this can be relevant like long term. Right now, maybe not, but with rotation, for example, this could easily be one of the go-to 2-drops in a mono red or red heavy aggro deck. So keep that in mind. Next we have Flame Sweep. 3-cost, deal 2 to everything except to your flyers. Not bad. Seems like an okay sideboard option in constructed, especially once Cannonade rotates out, like the go-to replacement. And yeah, in limited, situational, probably not main deck that often, but a great sideboard card against the right decks. Next we have Fry. Basically the rework of Combust. Instead of damage not being preventable, it now deals damage to planeswalkers as well, which is very important and makes this really powerful against both Teferis, for example, and against Narset. So yeah, great answer there. One of the better Hoser spells of the new Hoser spells we saw, but they're all pretty good and all like kind of reactive answers, which and not too punishing, just very effective. Which is, I guess, how they're trying to balance this kind of design that they didn't like in the past, where there were some super punishing ones that kind of just punished you for being in a certain color. So yeah, great card in constructed, and even like potentially main deckable and limited, depending on what the like good archetypes are in the format, and a great sideboard card, obviously. Next we have Goblin Ringleader. This is probably not going to be relevant for standard, but in modern we're getting awfully close to having like all the good goblin cards in modern, like all the good goblin legacy goblin cards mostly. So yeah, this might become pretty interesting pretty soon in modern, but until then just kind of there, and in limited seems hard to support it, and 4-cost 2/2 haste if you don't like draw a card or two at least seems pretty bad. Then we have Mask of Immolation. Much worse than the white counterpart. Here we get a 1/1. Basically we get a 2-cost elemental Mog Fanatic, and the re-equipping costs 2, and then how many creatures you have that are small and bad enough that you would want to sack them to deal 1 damage and also spend 2 mana to do so. So yeah, pretty underwhelming, but I guess if you want more elemental synergies this can suffice, but I think it's quite bad while the white version is really good. Then we have Rapacious Dragon. Very solid limited card. I mean, a 5-cost 3/3 flyer in limited is slightly underwhelming, but fine. Especially if you can make it like connect and keep the skies clear. And then yeah, getting 2 treasure tokens can either generate nice tempo or ramp you into like a 7-drop like the Maw that we talked about in part 1. Get that out earlier, stuff like that. So yeah, pretty solid card. Nothing super exciting though. And last but not least, for part 2, we have Scampering Scourger. Yeah, pretty fragile. Mainly lives off of like go white payoffs and elemental synergies. This pairs well in like a Boros deck with Inspire Charge, for example, or just like in a Timor deck with Risen Reef and other stuff. There's also the other 4-cost elemental that gets bigger for other elementals that you have. So yeah, with the right synergies, this seems pretty great. On its own, it's pretty bad. In Constructed, probably a bit too weak, but maybe there's enough payoffs to make this interesting. But Chandra does kind of the same and does it a lot better and cheaper. So probably not. Alright, that's it for part 2. I'll be back in a moment with part 3. Stay tuned.